So here we are at the end. The tattered remnants of a ship that failed to navigate the treacherous, stormy sapphic seas, obliterated by the jagged rocks of the status quo, destroyed by a tempest of shitty writing, and it bodes the question, why did they bother to write the Harper and Phil story in the first place? Like, honestly, they could have not written it, and it would have made no difference to how the year ended, which, oh man, that ending, I fucking hated it, but I'll get into that ending later. First, I'm assuming you've been following my series on Harper and Phil, where you saw me go from adamant it was a doomed storyline to foolishly allowing myself to be duped into believing they actually had a chance. But even if I hadn't been duped, I had no idea just how doomed the storyline was. Here are the cliff notes. Harper, longtime character on the New Zealand soap Shortland Street, is bisexual, established by her first sapphic relationship with Nicole some 10 years ago, before marrying man-child Drew some 9 years ago. Drew has issues, and Harper has put up with a lot from him cheating, all but calling her a murderer for having an abortion, going to jail, employing teens to grow weed, which is illegal in New Zealand, and being unable to truly forgive her for the time that she had a mental breakdown and left town because she was afraid for the safety of their kids. There is so much more than that too. In the first half of the year, Harper is feeling dissatisfied with her marriage and neglected by Drew because he's not dealing with the death of his former best friend's son, which he was involved with. When Phil, a new hotshot surgeon, comes along and starts flirting with Harper, things happen. They had chemistry, like genuinely good chemistry. They fall in love, or at least Phil does.
I told him I love you.
Harper is implied to.
You know how I feel about you, don't you? Yeah.
There is an earthquake to symbolize how earth-shattering this affair is. You know, they built it up to be something. They can't keep away from each other, and it has Harper seriously considering leaving Drew, and saying things like,
We care about each other, and it's more than just a meaningless fling.
You think that makes it any better?
I've just met someone, and suddenly it's crept up on us, on both of us, and it wouldn't have gone this far if it wasn't important.
They had them saying things that made me think that the relationship had legs. There was some tiring on and off again push and pull from Harper, who felt guilty about having the affair, but also she clearly wanted it and she had feelings. Although Harper ultimately ended it because she didn't want to destroy her family. But they also showed Phil to be so much better suited for Harper than Drew. Someone who actually cared what Harper wanted. It was all there. For an all too brief moment, I thought that we were getting some very clever writing, leaning in on a whole backstory established over a decade to have Harper break free from a toxic marriage where there was love but they never seemed to be able to communicate about anything important and always swept their issues under the rug rather than dealing with them. I dug deep into her past and I was seeing all the threads pulling together in what could have been the most insanely satisfying character growth ever. Even if the ship didn't sail, I thought to myself the purpose seemed to be to end the marriage. Otherwise, why invest this much screen time to it, right? Wrong. Well, if not that, then at least it'll offer some character growth, right? Wrong. Yeah, I was wrong, and it seemed I should have known better. After all, I saw how they handled the end of Harper and Nicole. Harper and Drew always got back together regardless of how badly Drew had acted, his behaviour always forgiven, but like he couldn't get past the one time Harper messed up, and I was also witness to some seriously mediocre writing for the other characters this year. So yes, Harper and Phil are done. Those who knew it, you can pat yourselves on the back. But perhaps even you didn't guess how done it was. Since my last video, where they had broken up, I predicted the focus would turn to the destruction of the Harper and Drew marriage, and, well, at least I was partially right. At first, there were frequent moments between the women that suggested things weren't really over. Both seemed to be grieving the loss of the other. Phil was announcing to everyone and sundry that she had been in love with Harper and was currently hiding in a lackluster relationship with good man Villy. Harper seemed very guilty and trying to repair what she could with Drew. It was hard to watch her grovel so abjectly to Drew, who dangled their kids over her head as a punishment. We heard Harper repeatedly express the sentiment that what she wanted didn't matter in all of this, and that her kids were her main focus. Harper and Phil interactions dwindled, and in a move I found actually quite odious, Phil and Drew got back to being buddies. But whatever, I get it's a small cast, you can't have characters having long-standing rows for plot reasons. Although they seemed quite happy to have Harper repeatedly treat Phil badly and then forget she existed. Phil, who, bless her blackmailing heart, just wanted to be supportive and kind. Harper just kept shutting that down, and the only 2 moments where the ladies really had a positive interaction was done for plot reasons that involved Drew losing his shit and revealing to everyone that Harper and Phil had an affair.
Still sleeping with my wife? You two just have no shame whatsoever, do you?
Stop it.
Stop it. And our family never crossed your mind when you were sneaking around with Phil. My God, Harper, how are you not ashamed of yourself?
Please, stop it.
And then, as the final straw in his mental health decline before he attempted to top himself.
Are you okay?
I don't know what to say to that, and you don't want an honest answer.
Doesn't matter what I want.
Yes, they managed to pivot the story around and make it all about Drew once again, which It's just so infuriating. I wasn't against the storyline. I thought having Drew, the macho man, the dude, have a mental health episode, I thought it had a lot of potential to be a powerful narrative to touch on this idea of toxic masculinity, bottling emotions, not dealing with trauma. Alas, despite a decent build-up, they completely failed to provide the payoff when they had him never properly deal with any of the factors that led to this attempt, bar a superficial conversation with Boyd and him being moodier than usual. 2 weeks after, he's back at work as if nothing happened. Quite honestly, you'd never guess he had been ready to top himself a couple of weeks ago, and he certainly doesn't seem to have grown from it. He was still quite happily shaming Harper for her mental health episode 2 years ago.
Well, that's the problem with you, Harper. Leaving is always an option.
It's not fair.
As if he hadn't made the choice to check out permanently, and he's effectively maneuvered all the blame onto Harper and her affair, and somehow he's framed as the golden boy. The Harper and Drew marriage got a similar superficial treatment. After slowly crushing that thing down, they're suddenly, without discussing any of the issues, back together again. Harper and Phil? What is that? Did it happen? It has left me confused as to why they put so much time and care into the affair. It could have been a one-night stand. It could have been a casual fling. There was no need to have it last months, to have the ladies fall in love. It was so unnecessary, but the only reason I can figure for this is because they needed to draw out the storyline because they had no idea what to do, even though I can think of plenty. And that would track, given how many times they looped on the same story beat, which has been, to point, one of my biggest criticisms. Now I'm adding god-awful writing to my criticisms as well. The thing I'm struggling with is that through all of this, nothing has seemed to ultimately have had any impact. Having Harper and Drew get back together invalidates months of storyline and leaves me, as the audience, with nothing to show for it because, after all is said and done, it led to a return to the comfortable and safe status quo. There are so many opportunities to create some dynamic growth for the characters, Harper specifically, who seemed, as I said in previous videos, to be on the verge of some kind of self-actualization, of finding some serious inner strength to break away from a man she loves, yes, but who has held her back, shamed her, belittled her, and repeatedly betrayed her trust, while also refusing to take proper accountability. There were so many ways a story could develop to offer up a compelling story without the need to repeat the same beat again and again. The potential was there. It wouldn't have taken much, and they could have still ended up where they did in the finale. You have to provide payoff for your stories, otherwise why watch it? It just leaves a bitter taste in my mouth where every expectation that was set up for Harper and Phil and Harper and Drew has been lampooned. So yes, the ending. What can I say about the ending? Awful? Hideous? An aberration? The episode itself was good, certainly better than the vast majority of episodes of the last while, which some have been dire. Harper was given her due. She got her heroic moment where she got to save Drew's life. Again, centering Drew. We got to see her be the amazing, competent doctor she has always been. The story stayed with her as she lay in ED. Phil was allowed to have her reaction, and it felt appropriate as someone who said she loved Harper. I felt it as she cried and lunged towards Harper's side. But beyond that, Harper and Phil were given no closure. No moment to acknowledge what they had spent months on, at least from Harper's side. And fine, I get they wanted to focus it on Harper and Drew, the super couple. Given how completely they dropped Harper and Phil, I wasn't even sure they'd give us as much as they did. At least, and we were really given the least, her death was given care, as compared to how Nicole was sent off the previous episode after a knee-jerk change of mind to turn herself in after spiraling down into the pits of hell this whole year, essentially destroying her character of 15 years, which led her to killing a deranged woman in a moment of adrenaline-fueled anger and then just being gone. At least Harper's exit wasn't that callous. Having said, Nicole is alive and Harper is not. Yes, Harper is dead. Even at the start of this storyline and all my skepticism, that was not on my bingo card of doomed sapphic love affairs because these characters have been beloved and have been such a mainstay. It seemed impossible that either one of them would be axed, let alone both. But as I've mentioned before, Shorty underwent budget cuts, which means come February, when the show returns, it'll be 3 days a week instead of 5. And I don't know this for sure. Perhaps Rhea Vandervis, who plays Harper, and Sally Martin, who played Nicole, wanted to leave. Perhaps it was just unfortunate how it all shook out and the show didn't plan it. Maybe they had to scramble to write these characters off, but it seemed to me they're saving budget by cutting some of their long-term characters. The fact that it also had to be the 2-decade-plus long-term sapphic characters, that it was Harper and not Drew, it stinks just the way it stinks that Drew's character has been treated like some golden boy all of these years, while Harper has had to suffer through his man-child behaviour that then gets played off as charming. Shorty always kills off a major character before the summer hiatus, and Harper was it. But the fact they didn't just send Harper off to the shiny job in the US is frankly an awful choice. They really did choose the worst of all scenarios here. I guess it's only fitting that Harper gets shafted one final and irrevocable time, while Drew gets to stay on, and just like it felt like Harper had been a supporting character to main man Drew all of these years, even the final montage of Harper centered Drew in it to the exclusion of pretty much everything else. Harper and Nicole's friendship got about a second, but nothing else. I hear you loud and clear, Shorty. In terms of sapphic characters, there is still Maeve, Nicole's wife, and Phil, of course, so I guess it's something that they could get rid of 2 bi characters and still have some standing. There is also still Gia, who is trans, and Sage and his boyfriend Chip, so I will acknowledge that. And I'm by no means suggesting Shorty has it in for the sapphic characters or anything. They treat all of their characters like this. It's just shitty, unsatisfying writing is all. So yeah, my bad, I should have been on my guard. It's not like it's my first rodeo with the show, or in general. I've seen my fair share of my ships dead and buried. I know the stats, but the treacherous and dangerous feeling of hope got the better of me, and it probably will again at some point. So, all I have to say is that I'm very disappointed. It was a colossal waste of potential, and I'll know better than to invest in a Shorty Street sapphic storyline again, because even if they are married like Nicole and Maeve, they somehow managed to make that a toxic dumpster fire too. Shorty is a vital show for New Zealand and its film industry. It's been a pioneer in bringing important issues to light, queer stories in particular having featured prominently since the start. So respect on that level, but equally, they got me invested by seeming to say Harper and Phil were going to be a thing, but then backpedaled in a way that betrayed the narrative, then crowned it off by killing off my fave. So, just no thank you, I am done. Until next time, lady lovers.